In December 2010, police officers began a systematic search of the dense scrubland along Ocean Parkway. They were looking for Shannan Gilbert, a young woman who had vanished 7 months prior after placing a frantic 911 call from a nearby coastal community. The search for Shannan Gilbert did not lead to her location that winter. Instead, it led to the discovery of 4 sets of remains, all wrapped in burlap and spaced within a short distance of one another. Within months, that number grew to 10. The discovery changed the nature of the investigation instantly. This wasn't a series of isolated incidents, but an active, organized dumping ground hidden in the brush of a barrier island. Because one woman had called for help and disappeared, a 17-year secret began to unravel, exposing a pattern of violence that had been hiding beneath the coastal landscape for decades. The victims found in the brush were all women who worked as escorts. Because they often operated outside traditional safety nets, their disappearances were difficult to track, leaving a trail of cold cases stretching back to the early 1990s. Investigators were stalled by more than just the passage of time. The remains had been exposed to the Atlantic elements for years, severely degrading biological evidence and making traditional DNA recovery nearly impossible with the technology of the era. The perpetrator added a layer of psychological warfare to his crimes. Using untraceable burner phones, he placed taunting calls to the victims' families, ensuring they knew exactly what he had done while remaining a digital ghost. For 12 years, the combination of degraded evidence and the killer's careful digital evasion created a vacuum where no suspects emerged and the investigation essentially stopped. In 2022, the formation of a new multi-agency task force brought a fresh focus to the evidence, utilizing specialized forensic tools that hadn't existed when the bodies were first found. Investigators began using genetic genealogy to identify the remaining anonymous victims. By rebuilding family trees from partial DNA matches in public databases, they were finally able to connect the remains of Fire Island Jane Doe to 34-year-old Karen Vergata. While genealogists worked on the remains, digital analysts mapped the historical pings from the killer's burner phones. By layering these signals over time, they identified a precise geographic intersection, a defined hotspot that pointed directly to a single neighborhood in Massapequa Park. By shifting from the physical search of the beach to a hunt through digital archives and genetic sequences, the task force successfully narrowed their focus to one specific suspect. That suspect was 59-year-old Rex Heuermann. Surveillance teams began tracking him in early 2023, watching a man who appeared to be an unremarkable suburban neighbor. Heuermann lived a double life as a successful Manhattan architect. He used his professional knowledge of planning and logistics to carry out his crimes, utilizing burlap bindings for disposal and selecting isolation sites he knew would remain undisturbed. When police finally searched his home and office, they found a chilling document on his devices, a detailed project management plan for murder. This evidence was bolstered by a DNA match from his wife's hair, which he had inadvertently carried from his home to the disposal sites. The very same attention to detail Heuermann used to build his career and conceal his crimes ended up providing the digital and biological blueprint for his conviction. On July 13, 2023, the surveillance ended. Heuermann was arrested on the street outside his Midtown Manhattan office, just blocks from Penn Station. The case reached its final conclusion in April 2026. Inside a packed courtroom in Riverhead, New York, the families of the victims sat just feet away from the man who had haunted their lives for decades. Heuermann pleaded guilty to 8 murders. He delivered his confession in a clinical, matter-of-fact tone, detailing his crimes for the court, while the victims' relatives wept in the gallery. The guilty plea stripped away the anonymity Heuermann had relied on, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life in prison and giving 8 families the official resolution they had been denied for up to 30 years. This resolution was driven by the persistence of the victims' families, who spent years pressuring the system to take these disappearances seriously. Their refusal to let the cases fade away kept the pressure on law enforcement. For over a decade, the slow progress in these cases led to criticism that the victim's profession had deprioritized the investigation. It was only after a shift in strategy and the dedication of a multi-agency task force that the barriers to justice were finally cleared. The conviction of Rex Heuermann serves as a reminder that the background of a victim should not determine the resources allocated to their case, and that silence can eventually be broken by a commitment to forensic detail. While the Heuermann case is now settled, the investigation into the Gilgo Beach dumping ground remains open. The district attorney has stated that while one case closes, the search for the remaining victims continues. Evidence suggests that this stretch of Long Island was chosen by multiple killers independently. Other suspects, such as Andrew Dykes, have since been identified in connection with separate remains found in the same coastal area. Rex Heuermann is behind bars, but the investigative work is far from over. There are still unidentified remains in that scrubland, and until every name is spoken, the machinery of justice on Long Island continues to run.